She mocked me for having a safe, boring job, thinking it made her look superior. I didn't correct her. I couldn't. But when someone at that dinner recognized something she overlooked, her entire world flipped upside down. She still blames me for the aftermath, but I never opened my mouth. I didn't have to. The dining room looked like something out of a holiday postcard, polished wood table, fancy china, soft yellow light dripping from the chandelier. But underneath all that quiet glow, you could practically taste the tension. I sat in my usual spot near the kitchen doorway, where I could slip out if things went south. Experience had taught me that at family dinners, a clean exit path was a survival tool. Veronica, my older sister by 2 years and an ego by at least 20, had organized this whole family gathering. The way she strutted in earlier, chin high and lips curved like she'd won some invisible award, I knew I wasn't going to enjoy myself. And I was right. Everyone, she declared, practically vibrating with pride, this is Trevor Walsh. She clasped the arm of the tall man beside her like she was showing off a luxury car. He's an Army Ranger, served 3 tours. He's a real American hero. Trevor gave a polite nod, shoulders squared and posture rigid in that way soldiers seem to carry naturally. He shook my mother's hand with firm respect. My father greeted him from his seat. Trevor looked the part, close-cut hair, sharper than necessary jawline, that quiet discipline you can't fake. Mom lit up instantly. Dad even cracked a smile. Veronica looked smug. And I? I stayed quiet, hands folded in my lap, letting the scene play out. Years of this dynamic had trained me to be a spectator in my own family. Finally, she motioned toward me. And this, she said, a sweetness coating her voice like poison, is my sister. She works in an office. She gave a tiny shrug. You know, paperwork. Safe. Boring. Nothing compared to what Trevor does. The smile on her face stretched a little too wide, as if she'd waited all week to deliver that jab. I met her eyes without flinching. I'd heard worse, sometimes in public, sometimes at holidays, and always with her underhanded little tone. But tonight she was showing off. She wanted an audience. She wanted a comparison. Unlike you and your safe little office work, she went on, louder this time, squeezing Trevor's arm. Trevor puts his life on the line for our country. He's a real hero. Her voice practically dared me to feel ashamed. I stayed still, let the words float right past me. If there was one thing I'd mastered, it was not giving her the satisfaction of a reaction. But Trevor reacted. He suddenly pulled back, not in an obvious way, more like his body locked up. His eyes narrowed as he looked at me. No, not at me, at my collar. Specifically, at the small metal pin clipped to it. Most people never noticed it. It was simple, just a small symbol, barely an inch wide. But for those who recognized it, it spoke volumes. Trevor did. His face drained of color. Veronica. His voice dropped low, tight. Stop talking. She blinked, confused. What? I'm just. You don't know who you're sitting with. His voice cut through her words, steady, controlled, like someone delivering an order. He didn't look away from the pin. Not once. The room froze. Mom looked like someone had hit pause on her remote. Dad leaned forward. Veronica's mouth slowly fell open. Trevor swallowed, turned toward me. And when he spoke, it was in the respectful tone soldiers reserve for only certain ranks or roles. Ma'am, he asked carefully, where did you earn that pin? I could have brushed it off. Could have lied or smiled it away. But right then, I remembered Veronica's smug little smirk. The way she puffed herself up at my expense. And I didn't feel like protecting her ignorance. Afghanistan, I said, calm as ever. My team operated out of several forward bases between 2012 and 2018. Veronica's skin nearly turned gray. Your team? I was a combat intelligence analyst, I said, still level. Worked directly with special operations units, Rangers included. We tracked high-value targets. The pin is awarded to personnel who served in active combat zones under hostile fire. Military or civilian. Trevor nodded, slowly. Which bases? Primarily FOB Sharana and Fenty. Rotated through others, depending on mission needs. Trevor's eyes softened with something fierce, respect, maybe gratitude. I served out of Sharana, he said quietly. 2013 to 2014. Intelligence saved my team more than once, saved my life during an ambush outside Khost. Dad finally found his voice. You were in combat zones? For 6 years. Yes, I answered simply. I couldn't tell anyone. It was classified. Still is, technically. I'm only explaining now because Trevor recognized the pin. Mom brought a hand to her face. You never said anything. We didn't know. I wasn't allowed to say anything, I reminded them gently. Clearance restrictions apply even to family. Silence settled again, thick and heavy, but this time, it wasn't tension aimed at me. Veronica sat there like she'd been struck dumb, the woman who spent 20 minutes bragging about her fiancé's bravery while belittling my safe little office job. Now she stared at me like she didn't recognize who she'd been mocking. Like the floor might open up and swallow her. If only, the paperwork you do, Trevor asked gently, his voice noticeably softer than it had been at the dinner table, is that still, you know, intelligence related? I set down my fork. I work as a contractor now, I explained. Threat analysis, risk assessments, strategic planning for overseas operations. It's office-based at this point, but it's essentially the same work I did in the field, just without incoming fire. Trevor swallowed, then turned toward Veronica. His expression wasn't just stern, it bordered on disbelief. You've been insulting the kind of work that keeps soldiers alive, he said plainly. You mocked your sister's service, and people like me depended on it. Veronica's voice shook. I didn't know. She never told us. How was I supposed to know? Maybe, I said quietly, by not assuming you already know everything. Maybe by not using someone's career as a weapon just because you want to feel superior. Her eyes darted away, cheeks burning. After that, dinner limped forward on broken conversation. Mom tried, bless her, to salvage it, asking me harmless questions about travel, asking Trevor about his training. But the air had changed. Even the fancy dessert, tiramisu from our dad's favorite bakery, couldn't sweeten the mess. Veronica barely touched hers, staring at her plate like it might swallow her whole. As the meal wrapped up, Trevor leaned toward me. I'm sorry, he murmured. I should have stepped in sooner. I shouldn't have let her talk to you that way. You didn't know, I said. And you certainly didn't expect your fiancé's sister to be someone with that kind of background. That's not the point, he insisted. It wouldn't matter if you worked at a grocery store. Nobody deserves to be demeaned like that. Especially not at a family dinner. His words carried a weight I wasn't used to. Respect without conditions. I nodded gratefully, though I didn't expect a miracle. Veronica had always been the type who needed to be on top. Cut me down, boost herself up, same story, different audience. Dinner was just another episode. But then, 3 days later, something I never imagined happened. Trevor called. No polite greetings, no smoothing it over. Just, I need to talk to you about Veronica. Can we meet? Coffee? I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, far from my parents' dining room and all the history baked into it. He arrived early, of course he did, sitting straight-backed even in a cushioned booth. Once we ordered, he didn't waste a second. I want to understand how long she's treated you like that, he said, hands clasped tightly. 8 months of dating her, and I've never seen her behave that way toward anyone else. She didn't just tease you. She humiliated you. Publicly. And if she's fine doing that to family, I need to know what I'm getting into. I took a sip of my coffee and thought about every silent moment in my childhood where I swallowed pain just to keep the peace. It's been like that pretty much forever, I said. Even when we were kids. His eyes urged me to continue. So I did. I told him about being 7, proudly clutching my little science fair ribbon, thrilled after weeks of collecting water samples and testing levels like I was some tiny environmental detective. The judges had praised my work, it felt like magic. Veronica, age 12, already the family's gifted prodigy, examined the ribbon and shrugged. She only won because the other kids weren't that smart this year, she said matter-of-factly. My project at her age was way more advanced. And just like that, my victory shrank. My parents didn't argue, didn't reassure me, didn't say, hey, let her have this. They just let Veronica rewrite the story. Trevor's brows pulled together. They didn't even correct her? They didn't contradict her, I said, which for a 7-year-old felt exactly the same. I told him about high school, making the varsity debate team as a sophomore, something rare at my school. Veronica was in college then. From afar, she still found a way to diminish it. She called home and said debate was just arguing without real purpose, not real intelligence. Every accomplishment I earned, she found a way to step on it. Prestigious university scholarship? She mocked financial aid, bragging that she paid her own tuition. Graduating summa cum laude? She shrugged and said grades don't matter in the real world. Trevor nodded slowly. She couldn't just let you succeed. She had to reshape it so she still won. Exactly, I said. And my parents never stopped her. They never said there was room for both of us to be proud. Then I told him about Thanksgiving, the year I got into my master's program for international security studies. Veronica rolled her eyes across the turkey platter and said, must be nice avoiding adulthood by hiding in school forever. Dad had actually laughed. That degree led directly to the job that sent me into war zones. The path I wanted. The path that mattered. But to my family? All they knew was that I said I got a government job that required travel. Which was true, in the most sanitized, classified way possible. Trevor shook his head slowly. You deployed to a combat zone, he said softly. Without being able to explain why. Clearance rules don't care about family, I replied. So Veronica kept making her little jokes. Paper pusher. Basement worker. Filing reports nobody reads. And the whole time, he murmured, you were tracking insurgent networks and saving lives. Yes, I said. But I couldn't say that. Not even once. So her version became the story. He leaned back, silent for a moment. Then he said something I didn't expect from a man who barely knew me. That's not a personality flaw, he said. That's a character problem. And it matters. And from the look in his eyes that day, I realized the dinner hadn't just changed the way Veronica saw me. It had changed the way Trevor saw her. I told Trevor about the night I came home from one of the worst deployments of my career, the kind that leaves a heaviness in your bones you can't sleep off. For 8 months I'd lived in a plywood operations center where the day blurred into night under fluorescent lighting, the air thick with sweat and dust. We worked 18-hour shifts, piecing together intel that led to missions most people would never hear about. High-value target captures. Foiled bomb plots. Lives saved, though you never got to meet the people you saved. And you never forgot the ones you couldn't. When I stepped off that plane back in the States, my body felt hollowed out. Exhausted. Bitter. Not the kind of tired a nap could fix. My parents put together a dinner to welcome me home. Veronica arrived late, waltzing in on high heels with her newest boyfriend, grinning like she owned the place. She announced they'd just bought an apartment together and turned the evening into a real estate seminar. Mortgage rates, market predictions, property taxes, her voice filled every corner of the room. Every time someone tried to ask me how I was doing, she redirected attention back to herself. By dessert, I'd contributed maybe 10 words total. Did your parents say anything? Trevor asked quietly. If they noticed, they didn't intervene, I answered. That was always how it went. Veronica took all the air in the room. It was easier for everyone to let her. I told him about another visit home, years later, between contracts, when I mentioned I might accept a position requiring another overseas deployment. Veronica didn't miss a beat before launching into one of her classic speeches. Some people never learn to settle down, she'd said, eyebrows arched like a disappointed parent. At some point you have to grow up and live in the real world. She made it sound like running away, Trevor said. She made it sound like being irresponsible, I corrected. As if building a stable life meant copying her choices. Marriage, kids, property, the checklist. If your life didn't look like hers, something was wrong with you. Trevor frowned. I could tell he was starting to picture himself on that checklist, and what would happen to him if he didn't measure up. I continued, explaining how her attitude didn't just impact me at home, it sabotaged my relationships outside of family. I lost friendships because I couldn't talk about my work. I dated people who couldn't handle the secrecy or distance. Veronica used that against me too. She'd point out everything she had that I didn't, I said. Husband, house, kids, visibility. As if privacy equaled failure. As if my silence proved I wasn't doing anything worth knowing. Trevor's jaw tightened. Not in anger at me, but at the growing picture of the woman he thought he knew. When did you stop expecting it to change? He asked. I thought about it for a moment. Probably around year 4 in Afghanistan, I said. I came home on leave and Veronica showed up with a new boyfriend she was sure she'd marry. She asked what I'd been doing, and I gave my standard response about classified work. She laughed and said, still playing spy games? When are you going to get a real job? Trevor looked stunned. I thought I was numb to that memory, but watching his reaction brought up the sting I'd buried years ago. That was the moment I knew, I told him. She wasn't going to suddenly wake up and see me differently. Her identity depends on believing she's better than me. There's no room in her worldview for my accomplishments. So I stopped waiting for her to understand. I told Trevor about the pin, the same one he'd recognized at dinner. How it had been awarded at Bagram Airfield in a private ceremony attended only by people who understood what it meant. How the citation was classified, its details never to be shared outside certain circles. I wore it home once, I said. Veronica asked what it was. I said it was a service recognition. She looked at it for half a second and changed the subject. To her, it was just one more thing about me that wasn't worth her time. Trevor was silent for a while. His fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup, his thoughts clearly somewhere far beyond the cafe. The woman I've been dating, he said finally, isn't who I thought she was. She's good at presentation, I replied. She always has been. Charming, impressive, confident. But underneath that? She needs to be the most important person in every room. Anyone who threatens that, even by existing, becomes someone she has to tear down. I told him how Veronica's pattern was bigger than just me. Friendships that ended in drama. Coworkers she labeled incompetent. Bosses she said didn't appreciate her brilliance. Always someone else at fault. Always a reason she was the victim or the misunderstood hero of her own story. And your parents never challenged it? Trevor asked. They defended her, I said. They rescued her. Every time someone called her out, they soothed it over, minimized it, blamed the other person. They raised her to believe nothing was ever her responsibility. Trevor leaned back, rubbing his face. After that dinner, he said slowly, I started paying attention to how she talks about people. Her coworkers. Her friends. Even strangers. There's always judgment. Always competition. I used to think it was confidence. But now you see the pattern. He nodded. And I don't want to marry someone who treats people like that. Especially the ones she's supposed to love. 2 weeks later, he ended the engagement. Veronica called me that same day, spitting venom through the phone. This is your fault, she screamed. You turned him against me because you couldn't stand to see me happy. Calmly, I said. Trevor asked questions. I answered. He made his own decision. You're lying. You must have said something horrible about me. You're jealous. You always have been. The old me, the girl who longed for her sister's approval, would have broken under that accusation. But I'd outgrown that girl. Veronica, I said, softly but unmistakably firm, Trevor saw who you are. I didn't tell him anything he didn't witness himself. You think you're special because you were in Afghanistan? She snarled. You think that makes you better than everyone else? I've never thought I was better than anyone, I answered. That's your obsession, not mine. You're the one who constantly needs to prove you're superior. I just wanted to do work that mattered and be left alone. She fell silent for a moment, shocked that I'd said it plainly. Not cruelly. Not angrily. Just truthfully. And that was something she couldn't fight. Because you can scream at a lie. But you can't argue with the truth when it finally stops trying to please you. She slammed the call shut on me before I could say another word. I just stared at my screen for a second, not angry, not shocked, just tired. After everything we'd talked about, after every truth Trevor had witnessed with his own eyes, she still chose rage over reflection. Typical. What I didn't expect came the next day. My phone rang again, this time, my mother's number. Her voice was tight, hesitant, like someone approaching a dog they weren't sure would bite. She asked if we could meet for lunch. No excuses, no small talk, just a request. We met at a small restaurant near her office, one of those places that tries very hard to be cozy by putting plants in mismatched teacups. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around her glass of water, just staring. Not judging, not accusing, just looking at me like she was seeing someone completely new. Or maybe seeing someone she'd ignored for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Your father and I have been talking, she said softly. About dinner. About Trevor. About you. I waited, guarded. We failed you. Her voice cracked a little as she continued. We were so busy feeding Veronica's need to be praised that we never paid attention to what you were quietly achieving. We never asked about your work. We never wondered why you couldn't talk about it. We just let Veronica tell us who you were. I opened my mouth to deflect, to say she couldn't have known about Afghanistan, but she shook her head before I even finished the sentence. We could have paid attention, she insisted. We could have noticed that you were doing something important even if we didn't know the details. Instead we let Veronica define you. And that wasn't fair. It wasn't right. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I'd spent years building the expectation that this kind of acknowledgement would never come. Hearing it now felt unreal, like someone waking me up inside a dream. Veronica has been calling nonstop, my mother continued. She's furious. She's saying terrible things about you, demanding that we side with her. And we realized something, for the first time. What's that? I asked quietly. That we're hearing the same story we've heard from her for years. Nothing is ever her fault. Someone is always out to get her. And we always believed it because it was easier than challenging her. She sighed, looking almost ashamed. But this time, she's blaming you for consequences she created in front of our own eyes. We can't ignore that. I sat there, unsure what to feel. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part felt numb. Like the apology came a decade too late to heal anything. I'm not telling you this because I expect forgiveness, my mom said. I'm telling you because you deserve to know we finally understand. We're going to do better. We want to be better parents to you. What does that actually mean? I asked. I wasn't harsh, but I didn't accept empty words anymore. It means we're not protecting Veronica from herself anymore, she said firmly. We're going to hold her accountable. And it means we're going to actually get to know you. Not the version your sister told us. You. A hopeful part of me wanted to believe her. A wiser part of me held back. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But I need to see change. Not just hear it. That's fair, she replied without hesitation. We'll show you through what we do from now on. And to my surprise, they did. My dad started asking questions about my work, not in a prying way, but in a respectful way. What does threat analysis actually involve? How do you approach risk? He respected boundaries when I said I couldn't answer certain things. He never pushed, never made jokes. My mom invited me to lunch regularly, just us, no Veronica agenda, no manipulation disguised as concern. She asked about books I liked, places I'd lived, the kind of food I missed overseas. She asked about me, not my resume. Veronica, meanwhile, began to unravel. Without my parents running interference for her, without their automatic sympathy, she found herself standing on her own. And she didn't like what she saw there. Friends started backing away. Coworkers grew tired of her one-woman competition. Her boss stopped coddling her and started critiquing her attitude. The world didn't hate her. It just finally stopped applauding her. And she had no idea how to survive without that applause. For the first time in our lives, her consequences were her own. The first real fallout came about 2 months after Trevor walked away from her. Veronica's world had always been built on carefully polished images, and the cracks finally started to show where she least expected them, at work. She'd been at her marketing firm 5 years. She knew how to dazzle leadership, how to pitch grand ideas, how to make herself look like the star of every room. And for the longest time, it worked. She was talented, I never denied that, but she was also brilliant at taking up space that wasn't entirely hers. Then came Holly. Holly was a quiet junior staffer, the kind Veronica usually ignored unless she needed research or last-minute grunt work. But Holly had created something extraordinary, a social media campaign that exploded online and brought in millions for their biggest client. The firm was ecstatic. There was buzz in the office, impromptu celebrations, champagne in cheap plastic cups, the whole thing. During the congratulatory meeting, Veronica stood up, smiling like she was accepting an award. She began thanking everyone for recognizing her strategic direction, crediting herself for guiding Holly's work, as though Holly were just lucky to have followed her brilliant vision. But Holly didn't back down. Calmly, professionally, she pulled up the original email threads. Showed her detailed pitch. Walked through the timeline. Demonstrated exactly how Veronica had actually criticized her idea in early drafts. And then, one by one, other team members nodded. Confirmed it. Stood by Holly. Suddenly, Veronica wasn't the visionary leader. She was the glory thief. I heard about it from Audrey over lunch. Your sister called me crying, she said, stirring her tea anxiously. She insisted her coworkers were jealous, that they were trying to destroy her reputation. And what did you say? I asked. I told her maybe it's time she asked herself why this keeps happening, my mother replied. Why people start pushing back against her. I almost choked on my drink. Audrey saying that? To Veronica? It didn't go well, she added. She said I was betraying her. She hung up. We didn't speak for 3 weeks. But the spiral was just getting started. Next came Madison, her college roommate, lifelong confidant, and sounding board. The friendship imploded after Veronica mocked the size of Madison's engagement ring, implying that her fiancé must not love her enough to save longer. Madison finally snapped. Years of backhanded compliments poured out, the subtle digs, the comparisons, the casual cruelty masked as advice. And then, in a single text exchange, a 10-year friendship ended. I didn't hear this from Veronica. She hadn't spoken to me since the breakup. I heard from my parents. She thinks you've poisoned everyone against her, my father said over the phone one night. She thinks you're masterminding some kind of vendetta. How would I be doing that? I asked dryly. Telepathically influencing her coworkers? Logic isn't part of her process right now, he sighed. She needs someone to blame. And you're convenient. What are you two doing about it? I asked. Are you falling back into defending her? We promised you we'd do better, he replied. So when she calls, instead of comforting her, we ask what role she played in the conflict. She doesn't like it. She's angry at us, too. That was new. Veronica angry at them. The shift in the family dynamic was seismic. 3 months after the dinner, I attended Audrey's birthday party. Veronica arrived late, breezed past guests like they were ghosts, and spent the entire evening glued to her phone. She radiated bitterness. The room felt heavy. At one point, as people trickled out, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her face was flushed, wine or fury, I wasn't sure. Are you happy now? She hissed. Is this what you wanted? Everything falling apart for me. I never wanted anything to fall apart for you, I said quietly. I just wanted you to stop treating me like I was less than you. I never treated you that way, she snapped. And here was the most painful part, she believed it. Truly believed it. In her mind, her insults were honesty, her comparisons were normal sibling competition, her belittling was harmless truth. At that dinner with Trevor, I reminded her, you mocked my work in front of everyone. You said it was safe, boring. That I didn't matter. You've done that to me my entire life. I was just telling the truth, she insisted. Trevor's job is dangerous. Yours isn't. That's not an insult. That's a fact. Except it wasn't a fact, I said. But even if it were, you didn't need to use it to make me small. You could have honored his service without diminishing mine. But you didn't. Because putting me down is how you lift yourself up. Her eyes filled with tears, not regret, but indignation. Everyone thinks you're some noble hero now, she spat. Poor you. Poor underappreciated sister. You hid your service on purpose. So don't blame me for not knowing something you chose to keep secret. You're right, I said gently. I couldn't tell you. But secrecy doesn't excuse cruelty. Even if I'd worked a boring office job, you didn't need to tear me down. The issue was never what you didn't know. It's how you treat people. Her tears hardened into rage. You turned everyone against me. Mom. Dad. Trevor. All of them. No, I answered, exhausted. They saw how you treat people. And they made their own decisions. She stormed out. The front door slammed. My mother peeked around the corner moments later, worry etched on her face. What happened? Reality happened, I said. She's just not ready to face it. Weeks later, Audrey told me Veronica had started therapy. That her supervisor had suggested stress counseling, though it was clearly aimed at her interpersonal issues. Do you think it will help her? My mother asked. It depends, I said. If she goes to prove everyone else is wrong, nothing will change. Therapy only works if you're honest with yourself. And that was exactly the issue. For the first time, Veronica didn't have anyone to shield her from consequences. For the first time, she had to face the world without guaranteed applause. And that kind of silence can be deafening for someone who only knows how to feel superior. Life, meanwhile, moved forward for me. I settled into civilian intelligence work, the same skills, just without the sand, heat, and threat of mortar fire. My relationship with my parents grew genuine instead of transactional. My dad asked about my work as if I were an adult worth knowing. My mom asked about my hobbies, not just my resume. Trevor and I stayed in touch, strictly as friends. He started seeing someone new, a teacher who smiled with her whole face. He seemed lighter. How do you feel about everything that happened? I asked him once. Relieved, he admitted. When I look back, I see the red flags I ignored. The way she talked about servers, colleagues, friends. It was all there. I just didn't want to see it. She blames me, I said. She probably always will, he replied. But that doesn't make it true. And he was right. Veronica's tragedy wasn't just her cruelty, it was her inability to see beyond her own narrative. She'd rather destroy every relationship in her life than risk admitting fault. Some people never grow, because growth requires humility. And to Veronica, humility felt like losing. So she stayed exactly where she'd always been, on top of a crumbling pedestal, angry at the world for refusing to keep holding it up. She called that honesty. The rest of us learned to call it what it truly was. Loneliness dressed as superiority. Over time, my relationship with my parents grew into something it had never been before, balanced. They started asking for my input on family decisions, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely wanted to know what I thought. Kenneth, who had spent most of my life sitting quietly while Veronica dominated every discussion, began talking to me about things I'd never heard from him. He shared stories about his own father's military service, tales he'd never told because there had never been room for them. One afternoon, after recounting a story about a mission his father worked on decades earlier, Kenneth paused and looked at me with an expression I'd rarely seen on his face. I wish I'd understood sooner, he said, voice thick. I wish I'd recognized what you were doing, and been proud of it, out loud. You can be proud now, I told him. That counts for something. When I think back to that infamous dinner, the moment Veronica smirked and called my work safe little office stuff, I realize it wasn't just the reveal that changed everything. It was the confrontation with reality. It forced everyone in that dining room to see what they'd been ignoring for years. Trevor saw the difference between confidence and cruelty. My parents saw the consequences of their favoritism. And I saw that I never needed their approval in the first place. The pin I wore that night wasn't flashy. It didn't beg for attention like Veronica's accomplishments always had. But that small piece of metal carried more weight than any trophy, paycheck, or promotion she'd ever bragged about. It represented nights of interpreting fragmented intel, trying to predict explosions before they happened. It represented missions that succeeded because someone in a plywood room studied maps and phone intercepts for 18 hours straight. It represented lives saved without ever stepping into the spotlight. I didn't need Veronica to understand that. She wasn't capable of valuing something she couldn't see or use to boost her image. Her attempts to diminish my work said nothing about its worth. They revealed her insecurity, not my inadequacy. Watching her face pale when Trevor recognized the pin felt satisfying. Sure, I'm human. But the real victory wasn't her embarrassment. It was the clarity that followed. I finally understood that I'd spent years trying to earn the respect of someone whose judgment had always been shallow. Someone who equated visibility with value, volume with excellence. My work had mattered whether she acknowledged it or not. The silence surrounding my service was not a sign of insignificance, it was a requirement of necessity. The impact existed without applause. Years later, I still see Veronica at holidays and birthdays. She's learned to keep her comments neutral, not because she's changed, but because our parents no longer tolerate her subtle jabs or self-elevating behavior. She's polite, distant, careful, but any hope of sibling warmth is long gone. People sometimes ask whether I regret how things turned out. The honest answer is no. I regret that we never had the kind of bond sisters are supposed to share. I regret that our parents fostered a rivalry instead of gratitude and support. But I don't regret the boundaries I built. I don't regret protecting myself from her contempt. That dinner taught me something simple but life-altering. Truth reveals itself in time. You don't have to force it. You don't have to expose it with dramatic speeches or vindictive revenge. Veronica's mask slipped when she insulted me in front of someone who understood what she was mocking. Trevor didn't need explanations or counterarguments. He recognized what he saw. So did my parents, finally. I didn't ruin Veronica's life. I didn't orchestrate her downfall. I simply wore a pin that meant something to people who knew what to look for. Everything else, the unraveling, the shifting loyalties, the consequences, came from Veronica's own choices. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes justice is simply truth being witnessed by the right eyes and valued by the right people.